Hi guys, welcome back to the next video of this series. I hope you're doing okay. Today we're going to discuss data types, and let's jump right into the video. Now, first thing that I want to talk about in data types is that these data types are very important in helping us representing data. So these will help you manipulate data in a very meaningful manner. So you store data in your application in a way that it makes sense. A number should be stored in a number data type. In a numerical way, and we're going to discuss some basic data types today, and we're going to discuss strings, numbers, integers, and dictionaries and arrays, and how these things are stored and how to use them. And we're going to also give some exercises that you can follow along. So the best strategy here is to watch the tutorial and pause the video whenever I say that pause the video, and do whatever stuff that I ask you to do, and do that stuff, and you will learn just fine, and you will practice along the video. Now, the first data type that I want to talk about is strings. And strings is just a collection of characters, a collection of letters. So let's say I declare a variable called first name. We talked about variables in the last video, and you can declare it like that, like anyone's first name. You can call it John. And okay, so first name variable has stored this thing called John, and whenever you see these single quotes, these determine that the thing written is a string. The Python interpreter or Python compiler will read this as a string. Now you can also declare these with a double quotation marks. So for example, let's say I say my last name is Dory, and John Dory. Now, well, first name and last name. Well, my last name is Dory and my first name is John, let's say. But the second one is declared with double quotations. Now you can use both of them, but single quotations are recommended. Well, it doesn't matter, it's just a personal choice. And you can just print these with a print statement, right? For example, I say, oh, well, I want to print my first name, and I just press play and everything works. Now, I also want to talk about the methods that Python gives us to act on strings. And first of those methods, or there are many methods, but a few of them I'm going to show you right now. One of them is lowercase. Well, you can see that the J in this John is in uppercase, so I can use a method called lower, but it's in the string. So to access a method in something, you have to just do this, just write this. I'm going to explain classes and how they work. It kind of works like that, but we're going to talk about this later in the later part of the video. But this is how you access a method in string. And so what this is going to do is this is going to lowercase all the letters in John, and you can print this right here, and it'll print everything in lowercase. And if there's another method called upper, and if you do this, it'll print everything in uppercase, as shown here. Now there's another method that is concatenation, which is just telling you to just join two things together. So if I say, well, I want to show my first name and last name together, like John Dory, so I can do something like, well, I can print again, and I can say, okay, well, first name plus last name. And this will just join these two strings together, and this will add up, John Dory. There you go. Now if you want to add another space here in between, you can just, well, add a simple space character in the string, and there you go. You can have a John Dory with a space, and that is your name. Now pause the video and do the following tasks. Take your first name and last name in two different variables and try to print them as shown in the video. Alright, we also got to talk about the string methods. Python gives us a lot of methods to work with strings. We are going to discuss a few of them here. First of the methods that I want to discuss is length method. And so this method right here, len, is the method. And in the argument of this function, you give just a string or an array, which we will discuss later, which are lists. But for now, you can just write this, and this will give you the length of your first name. So I play this, and this will give me the length. Now another method that I want to talk about is the uppercase letter. So the upper method comes in the string. So to access that, we have to use the dot operator. Now you might not understand that in the beginning, what I do here, but you will at the end of the tutorial. But a string is like an object, and when you use the dot operator, you kind of access all the things that are in the string. And string comes up with a lot of methods. In Python, you can use a lot of methods that are associated with strings. So for example, dot upper, this will return an upper string. So if I play this, you'll see that John is now in upper. And similarly, you can use a lowercase method. For example, let's say I want to lower Dory, which is my last name. Now, of course, you might have a little trouble understanding the syntax here. As you see, the D was capital, but here it is small. Now, you might have a little trouble understanding the syntax here, but believe me, by the end of this tutorial, we are going to discuss classes, we are going to discuss objects, and you will understand, well, you're going to be making your own objects and your own classes, and how do you do that. But for now, well, this is how you access a method upper. This is how you lowercase a string. This is how you find the length of a string. So now we're going to study numbers, and well, you probably already know what numbers are. So this will be a very short session or short part of this video. So for example, I can say, well, my age is 20, and sure, this is a number, but this is a special type of number which doesn't have any, floating point or floating number. So I can call this an integer. And you have to remember that this is an int type or int type. You don't have to remember it. Well, probably never memorize in programming. Now age is 20, it's an integer because there is no point in it. And remember that there is no quotation mark here. So that's also very important. Now, for example, I talk about a temperature in Kelvin, and I have to store it in a point, right? So I can say, well, 301.2. Now this is in points. This is not like 301. If it was 301, we could say, well, it's an integer, but this is a floating point digit. Well, you can store it in any kind of variable because Python lets you do that. But it's very important that you know what variable is what, because you can get many errors. And I will show you what kind of errors you can get into, one of those errors in this video. But this is a floating point number, this is float, a number in which there are decimal points. It's just a float. Now there's another type in Python, a complex number, so I can show you right now. You probably have studied them in math, but it's okay if you don't. It's not used a lot. I haven't used it a lot, but you can see if you need it whenever. But there's an imaginary part, and there's a real part of this, and you can actually represent this using the J here. You cannot use I, you cannot use O, you have to use J, and it'll work just fine. Now I want to show you an error here while printing. For example, I say my age is, and we saw that we could actually concatenate the strings. And if I try to do this and I say, well, my age is plus age, oh, I wanna show my age on the screen, and I print this, and let's see what happens. It gives me an error, and it says it cannot concatenate string. It is not a string, it is an int, so it cannot concatenate them together. It is trying to find a string, but it found an int. So Python cannot figure out whether you're asking it to add a string into a number or a number into a string. So there is one solution to this, to convert this into a string, which will work just fine. And you can see that my age is 20 is now printed. Now we can also convert a string into a number as long as it is convertible. So I cannot convert this, Dory, into an int, but I can convert this age, which becomes a string later by using this. We can actually convert this into an int. So to show this, let's say I add 10 into it, 10 plus string, which probably should give me an error, right? So int and string, well, they're not compatible, they're not supported. Now, if I convert this back into an int, there's another method. These are all built-in methods, int and str. And if you do this, it should probably, add them all together, like 10 plus 20, that's 30. So this is all that I want to talk about numbers right now. We will probably get into details later, but don't worry about that now. If you get stuck, don't worry about it. Practice what I ask you to practice, just do that on your own, and there are many resources online, you can Google anything, but this is a very basic concept, and if you get that down, you can learn anything. Now I also want to talk about Booleans. This is a simple data type. For example, it's just used to express whether something is true or false. That's it. So I can say, well, is the front door open? And you can just set this to true or false. That's it, true or false. And like, this is false and this is true. That's it. That's all there is to it. And why are these important? We will use these later in conditional statements, where we'll learn, well, if something is true, you do this. If something is false, you do that. That's all there is to the Booleans. And they're also used in loops, and this is the most fundamental concept, and this is used a lot in programming. It's just a simple concept. Well, you can represent things as false or true, 0 or 1, which are used kind of, like 0 can be used to represent false, and anything else can be used to represent true. But we'll get into that later. For now, just understand that, well, true or false, just the words themselves in capital letter, well, camel case, you can say. First letter should be capital, and this is what is used to, categorize something as true or false. That's it. That's very simple concept. Alright, so now we're gonna talk about lists. What are lists? And lists are just or lists or arrays, you can call them whatever, but they're just like a bag, like for example a school bag carrying a couple of books, but here the books are of the same data type. So that is the thing here. And lists can contain anything, for example, I can say that, well, temperatures in Kelvin. And to actually declare an array, what you have to do is use these square brackets, and you can just put the data in. For example, well, 301, 20294.3, 2255221, 221, whatever. And you can actually put in as many things as you want to put in this array or list. And yeah, that's how you use lists. Now to access, for example, I want to access like this first thing and this thing and this thing. To do that, you do this. Temperatures in Kelvin, and just access it like that. For example, 0. Now here's the interesting thing, like if I run this, it'll give me the first value. Now in computing, we start indexing from 0, so I start counting from 0 in arrays or lists. So this is just like a sequence of things, and you start counting from the first thing. For example, if this is the first thing, you start counting from here, but the counting starts from 0. That's the most important thing. So this is 0, this is 1, this is 2. I can even write it here. It's the 0 index, 1 index, 2 index, 3 index, 4 index, and it goes till n, like infinity almost. And you can access any element at which place where it is. For example, at 0 we have 301, at 1 we have 294.2, at 2 we have 221, and that's it. So this is how you access a list or an array in Python. You can also use the length function here again. For example, I say, well, print the length of my array. How many elements are in this list or an array? There are 3, right? So I can actually print them right here by passing this. And using the length function again, len, not th. I run this and it's going to give me 3 answer, of course, right here. So this is very important. Arrays are very important, and they're used all the time. The next thing we're going to talk about are dictionaries. Alright, so now we're going to talk about dictionaries, and dictionaries are a fairly simple concept. Now there are 2 things to a dictionary. One is a key and one is a value. They come in key value pairs, right? So, well, there's only one way to know what a dictionary is by an example. So let's say, well, I call my example, and these dictionaries are represented by these curly brackets, remember that. And there's a key and there's a value, right? And this key is always going to be in a string format, remember that. And this value is whatever it is. You know, you can store anything here, but we'll get into that sooner. Now let's say I want to print this value here. What do I need to do? Well, I need to do this. You know, I need to access it like an array. It's just like an array, but instead of that 0 1 2 3 4 like a sequence, we just use this value here, this key here, and it'll print the value. You will see right here it prints the value. Now we can discuss a lot more than this, in fact. So let's get into a real example, you know, and let's talk about temperatures. And first thing I want to talk about temperatures is, well, let's store a temperature on a given day, right? For example, temperature on 15th is equal to, well, what keys do we need? What do we need to store our temperature? We need, well, what day was that temperature on? And day is pretty much 15, right? 15 12 2020. And I also want to know the value, and this value is, well, they are not keywords, remember that. They're just our choice. Whatever my choice is, well, whatever your choice is as a programmer, you choose it. And 301.2, whatever. So you can store actually numbers here, and you can also store this. You can also store arrays here, remember that. Now I can access all these values just like that. For example, just similar to an array, remember that. So for example, well, temperature on 15th, and I want to access this value, and I just print here, and it's going to give me that value. This is the temperature on 15th. Now I can store a lot of stuff here, and these dictionaries are very, very useful. For example, I want to store temperatures of, you know, many temperatures. How do I store them, right? And I've stored them in an array. I can make an array of these temperatures, which we'll get into it later. But for example, let's say I want to make a person, and you know, let's call that person Kevin. So, well, a person is like a person, right? You're making almost an object, but it's not like that. If you know JavaScript, you're familiar with JavaScript object notation or JSON, and it's very similar to this. But I assume you don't know anything. And, well, what does a person have? A person has a name, you know, and, well, name can be Kevin. Remember that this Kevin is just a variable name. It has nothing to do with anything here. Well, what is the age of this lad? Let's say 19. And, well, what is the gender? Of course, a boy. And that's pretty much it. Oh, sorry, male. That's pretty much it. And you can do a lot of stuff with this. As you're seeing, these can be used in a lot of things, right? You can store a lot of stuff here instead of that little small array where you have only one thing, you know, a number. You can make an array of these objects, and you can store way more data than a number. So for example, I wanna, as I was talking about the example of it's an extra thing, but I will ask you to do a task here. But one thing that I want you to do is, well, let's go through an example here, right? Temperatures. And I want to make an array of temperatures, right? Now I don't want to use these small little numbers here. I want to use these arrays. Can I do that? Of course I can do that. Well, I can type in, well, this is not a very clean way of doing it, but this is definitely a way to do this, right? Well, my temperatures consist of day and day, sure, Monday, and these are unrealistic values. In reality, it's not that low, I think. So let's just go with 2 for now, and don't get worried if you actually don't understand any of this. I think you probably will. I think I've done a good job explaining it. But now if I want to access a temperature, it should be a very cool job, because now instead of this array here, which has just this one small value, I have a lot more information here. and I can print this information to prove that to you. For example, temperatures. What is the temperature in the first index? We studied that indexing just starts from 0 and is used to access things in a list, which of course this is a list. This is a list of these dictionaries. I want to print the dictionary straight as it is, and Python does that for me. It shows that this dictionary has a day and a value, and I can access that by doing this, because this now returned an object, and now I can say, well, what is the value? And you can see that it'll work just fine. Now I want you to do a task, which I will of course list in the video for you to do right next. Pause the video and do the following tasks. Declare 5 dictionaries with keys name, age, gender, and location. Store them in 5 variables. Store these variables in an array and try to print each of them. Alright guys, this is it for today. I hope that you actually complete the tasks that are given in the video, and I'll see you later. Next time we're going to talk about operators, which we can operate on numbers, and I just want to say that you actually practice all the stuff that is given in the video, so because that's the only way you're gonna improve. I mean, if you just watch the video, then you're gonna forget all of this stuff pretty soon. This stuff forgets fast. And so just do the tasks that I give you. From now on, I'm gonna give you some tasks during the video, so you gotta pause that, and I'm gonna do that in this video too. So I'm sure that I have done that in the editing, and I'll see you in the next video, the next part of the tutorial, and stay prepared and stay safe.